Good evening. I'm Carolyn Schoenberger, and I want to welcome you to Immigration Forum. And we are with the Chicago Legal Clinic sponsoring this show. I would like to welcome our guest, Edyta Sacata, who is a member of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. And also, Edyta, what is the name of your firm?
I'm with Quinteros, Brito, Wood & Boyer, and I have been focusing the practice in immigration law for about the last 10 years.
And would like to welcome Edyta, who is the co-chair of the Unauthorized Practice of Law Committee of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. And tonight we're going to focus on a new development that is going to go into effect at the end of the month, and it is dealing with the issue of waivers of inadmissibility, also known as perdones, pardons. So before we go into what a waiver is and the changes and how many more people are now affected by this, hopefully in a good way, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Chicago Legal Clinic. I'm going to first talk about the Chicago Legal Clinic in English, and then I'm going to talk about the Chicago Legal Clinic in Spanish. So the Chicago Legal Clinic was established in 1982 by two new lawyers who had just passed the bar, Father Thomas John Paprocki and Eduardo Grossman. And Edward Grossman is the executive director, and Father Thomas John Paprocki is now Bishop Paprocki of Springfield. And they established Chicago Legal Clinic in South Chicago. In fact, it was called the South Chicago Clinic for Immigrants because the place had been devastated economically. Prior to the 1970s, this part of Chicago was a very vibrant community. People worked in the mills there, in the steel mills. There were businesses. But as the steel mills started closing in the 70s, people lost their jobs and they didn't have money to go and buy furniture or go to a restaurant. So many of the local businesses went out of business. There were no legal resources for people there. So the South Chicago Legal Clinic for Immigrants was established. At some point in time, other offices were added, Pilsen, Austin, downtown. And today, the Chicago Legal Clinic serves residents of Chicago and the suburbs and anyone who's willing to travel to us who live in the area. And we serve people who have questions regarding immigration, domestic violence, Social Security disability, wills, real estate issues. So if you would like to consult with an attorney at the Chicago Legal Clinic, please call between the hours of 9 and 5, Monday through Friday. Please call the number on the screen, 773-731-1762, 773-731-1762. It's on the back of the screen if you look behind you, the Chicago Legal Clinic. And I may add that the Chicago Legal Clinic not only has 4 offices, but they have free programs in the courts dealing with foreclosure, chancery matters, child support, and the Chicago Legal Clinic sponsors a free clinic for students at Harold Washington College. And I may add, those students interested in going to Harold Washington College or any of the other city colleges of Chicago have until Monday to register for the fall term, so please get on it. So if you have a question, again, call the number on the back of the screen, 773-731-1762, between the hours of 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, to set up an appointment with an attorney who will talk to you about your situation. I also want to warn people that there is no new law. There is no new law. There should not be waiting lists for no new law. We do not know what is going to happen regarding immigration in the future, and which is why it is always good to talk with a lawyer. But again, there is no new law. So please, if someone says to pay money to be in a waiting list, please do not do that because there is no new law. I'm now going to talk in Spanish. Buenas tardes, me llamo Carolina Schoenberger y me gustaría hablar sobre la Clínica Legal de Chicago. La clínica es una organización sin fines de lucro que brinda servicios legales a personas con bajos recursos. La clínica fue establecida en 1982 para ayudar a la gente del sur de Chicago. Antes de 1980 había muchas acerías en el sur de Chicago. Cuando las acerías cerraron, mucha gente perdió su trabajo y los negocios sufrieron por la falta de clientes. En estos tiempos en el sur de Chicago no había ninguna organización que ofrecía servicios legales a personas de bajos recursos. Fue entonces que dos abogados recién recibidos decidieron brindar sus servicios en un cuarto a la calle, estableciendo así la clínica en 1982. Hoy en día, la clínica tiene 4 oficinas en el sur de Chicago, en Pilsen, en Austin y en el centro. También hay otras oficinas que en las cortes donde se ofrece ayuda legal gratuita, gratis a las personas con problemas de paternidad, mantenimiento de los niños, personas que han perdido o están en peligro de perder sus casas. Hay ayuda. También hay una oficina en Harold Washington College donde soy profesora que ofrece ayuda legal gratis a los estudiantes. Si usted tiene un problema legal como por ejemplo inmigración o violencia doméstica, bienes raíces, seguro social para gente incapacitada o testamentos, por favor, llame al número en el ecrán abajo de nosotros, 773-731-1762, 773-731-1762. Y quería decirle, no hay ninguna ley nueva, no hay ninguna ley nueva. También yo sé que hay mucha gente que tiene miedo de lo que personas están diciendo. No podemos deportar un ciudadano americano. La Corte Suprema dijo esto hace más que 100 años. Si hay problemas, hay de consultar con un abogado. So I think this is probably good to try to talk about the fact that if you have a complaint against a lawyer, I'm going to try to remember which screen we go to, and in any event, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, if you go to AILA.org, they have a list of lawyers. If you have a complaint against a lawyer, you can contact the Illinois Attorney Registration and Disciplinary Commission. If you have and people should not be giving you legal advice, it is very easy to fill in a form. The issue is which form and should you do that? And there are cases when you should not do that. Okay, so again, I want to welcome our guest, Edyta Sacata, from the American Immigration Lawyers Association. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So we thought that we would do something different tonight. We don't know if it's going to work or not, but and please, if you want to call the number on the screen in front of you, 312, I should put my glasses on, 312-738-1060. You can ask us a question while we're talking, so please don't hesitate to do that. So what we thought we'd do tonight is we would do just a little bit of an interview that a lawyer might conduct with a client, and why it's so important when you do talk with a lawyer, number one, to bring all pertinent documents, and the other thing is not to hide anything. Because if you hide something, that could be the one thing that could really be a problem. So, Edyta, you're going to be the client?
I am going to be the client today, and I also wanted to say that I always tell my clients before they come to my office to make sure to bring any kind of documents that relate to immigration or criminal history. So that's sort of like a basic, but I'm going to be playing the part of the client for today.
Okay, so Hello, my name's Carolyn Schoenberger,
Very nice to meet you.
and I'm an attorney with the Chicago Legal Clinic. And I'm going to look straight at the camera, but normally I'd be looking at my client, and my client would be looking at me. So I have some questions while I do an assessment of your situation. What is your name, please?
My name is Jane Doe.
And have you ever used another name?
No, I haven't.
And what is your date of birth?
It's 12/2/71.
So would that be December 2nd or February 2nd?
It's actually February.
February 2nd, because sometimes we report dates differently than other countries. And where were you born?
I was born in Greece,
Okay, can I ask what city, please?
Athens.
Athens, Greece. And are you a citizen of Greece?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. When did you come to the United States? Do you recall the date?
I came to the United States in February, I think it was February 12th of 2012.
And did you come in with a visa?
I'm sorry, it was 2010. No, or 2000. No, I did not come with a visa.
So just to be clear, you came in 2000 and you did not come. So under what circumstances did you enter the United States without a visa?
Well, I came through Canadian border.
Was there a border crossing? Did you see any official from immigration either on the Canadian side or the American side?
Well, I think I went through a border crossing, but I did not see anyone because I was in the back of a car, of a cargo car.
Okay, and so you were never stopped?
I was never stopped. I never really talked to anybody at the border.
Okay, so you came in, and have you ever left?
No, I have never left.
Okay. And have you ever been arrested for anything?
No, I haven't.
Either here or in Greece?
Correct.
Okay. And have you been a victim of any crime?
Well, I had something stolen out of my car once.
Okay, but other than that, that you've had the good fortune not to be a victim of any kind of violent crime?
Correct.
Okay. Are you married?
Yes, I am married.
And is this a first marriage?
No, this is my second marriage.
And do you recall the birth date of your husband? Your first husband, I'm sorry.
My first husband was born in March 8th of 71.
And where was he born?
He was also born in Greece.
And were you married in Greece?
Yes.
Do you recall the date?
I was married I don't exactly recall the date, but I think it was in 96.
Okay, well we can check the exact date. Where were you married in Greece?
I was married in Athens.
In Athens. And were you subsequently divorced?
Correct.
And where were you divorced?
I was also divorced in Greece.
And do you have a copy of your divorce decree?
I don't have any of documentation like this with me.
Okay, but are you able to get a copy of, because we would have to submit that?
Yes, I think my family can obtain it.
Okay, so you were divorced in Greece, and when did you meet your husband, your current husband?
I met my current husband after I came to the United States.
And when you came to the United States, did you come to Chicago directly?
Yes, the car drove through some other places, but I ended up coming to Chicago.
And was your current husband married before?
No.
Okay, and is he a U.S. citizen or resident?
I think my husband told me that he has a green card.
Okay, so he's a lawful permanent resident. And do you have any children from this marriage?
Yes, I have two children, Joe and Jordan.
And when was Joe born?
Joe was born 12 years ago. He's currently 12.
Okay, and where was he born?
He was born in Chicago.
So you have a birth certificate that we would be able to submit?
Yes.
And Joe, where was Joe born?
Also in Chicago.
And do you remember the date?
He's 17 years old now.
Okay, that's great. Have you ever been before an immigration judge or had any dealings with anyone from any of the immigration agencies, the Border Patrol, the people who are involved in enforcement?
No, I have never really had any dealings with immigration.
Okay. And again, you've been here. Have you ever committed a crime that no one knew about?
No, I haven't.
And by the way, I think that is one of the strangest questions because that you can be asked. But they do ask it. Have you ever committed a crime for which you were not arrested?
No.
Okay. And have you ever worked as a prostitute or sold drugs?
No, I haven't.
These are, again, questions that are on the form. In coming here, has any family member in the past filed a petition for you, like a parent or a sister who was in the United States as a citizen or resident?
No, I don't think there were any petitions filed for me.
Okay. Okay, so based on this, and now we're going to go back into lawyer mode. The person is eligible to become a U.S. citizen, lawful permanent resident, but there are a few problems.
Right, we have a problem, and I think the most apparent problem would be the method of entry and the fact that the client never had any type of visa and was not inspected at the border.
Okay, when we say inspected, we don't mean they physically touch you. At least hopefully they won't physically touch you. That they look to see that you have the proper credentials. So again, if Jane were to apply, or Jane's husband would try to apply, the first step would be to prove eligibility. That is usually not a very difficult step to prove eligibility, but then because the husband's a lawful permanent resident, there'd be a delay, maybe 2 years before the second part where Jane would actually apply to get the visa. So you need the first step showing there's eligibility, and the second is the actual, are they admissible? And Edyta, you were saying she's not admissible.
Correct. So basically, we have a problem with an application because of the fact that she entered without a visa, and because of that, she would be subject to a bar. And
when would the bar? Okay, what do we mean by the bar? Can she get her visa in the United States?
No, she can't.
And once she leaves the country because she was here for more than a year without documents, she would then be barred from coming back for 10 years.
Correct. And that's where the provision that has just been announced, the enforcement of the provision comes in, the provisional waiver, which will enable her to apply for permission to travel outside of the country and obtain a visa in the United States, rather than traveling outside of the country and wait for the application for the permission.
There is a new law, or not, there is a new rule that was adopted through the Administrative Procedures Act that goes into effect the end of the month, doesn't it?
Correct. It comes into effect on August 29 of this year.
Okay, so based on that, in the past there have only been very narrow, only U.S. citizen parents or U.S. citizen spouses were qualifying relatives for the waiver, also known as un perdón, a pardon. And what does this new regulation do?
So basically, this regulation enlarges the scope of qualifying relatives. So
and it includes whom?
Now it includes the parents or spouses who are U.S. citizens and also green card holders, permanent residents.
So lawful permanent residents who have green cards can now apply if they are the spouse of an immigrant or the parent. What about children? Can children be qualifying relatives?
It is a very common question, and unfortunately this change did not enlarge the scope enough to, basically they do not, to make it make an answer simple, they do not qualify as qualifying relatives.
So unless someone applied for you, a family member or a parent, before the 30th of April 2001, you cannot get your green card in this country. You have to go back to your country, and once you leave, you can't come back for 10 years unless you get this waiver of inadmissibility. And it can only be for entering without inspection, correct?
It can be for entering without inspection. Also would apply to intending immigrants who had entered on a visa and then overstayed, and they fall in certain categories which require them to leave the country to obtain the immigrant visa in the consulate. And again, depending on whether they overstayed by 180 days or 1 year, they will be hit with penalty, which will bar them from coming back for 10 or 3 years. So this rule will also help them to apply for permission to come back while in United States. So they will basically, they won't have to be separated from their families. They can apply, file an application, wait for the decision, and then they can travel.
So in the case of Jane Doe, once the first step, once the application that she's eligible to apply for a visa is approved, and if a visa is then available, she would get then a bill from the State Department because her file would be sent to the State Department to obtain her visa abroad. And then the waiver process starts.
Correct.
And for the waiver process, many people think it's just a form. Is it just a form?
I would say the form is the least important part of the waiver application. I always explain to my client that really what matters is the evidence that is submitted with the form. So the story that you paint with the evidence that's being submitted that is very specific to every person's case is what really matters.
So I did not ask Jane Doe the questions I would, which is your husband in good health?
And now I'll
Go
return
back to being Jane.
to being Jane. Yes, my husband is of good health.
And what about your children?
Well, my older child is in a good health. However, my younger child has health problems.
What kind of health problems?
My child has heart-related problems and has been treating with a doctor at Northwestern Children's Hospital.
So, Lurie Children's Hospital, and what has the doctor told you about what might happen in the future with your child?
He said that basically my child may need a surgery for heart valve transplant at some point, maybe next year.
So that's very serious.
Correct.
And if you were not in the United States, who would be the person to take your child to the doctor?
That will be only my husband, who is very busy working. His work schedule is very hectic.
And do you own a house?
Yes, we do own a house.
And do you own cars?
Yes, we have cars that take us to work.
So back to being lawyers, in preparing a waiver, we would have to submit evidence of the medical conditions, the financial conditions, and affidavits. Well, what is an affidavit, and what would an affidavit state?
Correct. So basically, we will have a statement, sworn statement from any kind of witness, a person that knows that the situation. Against focus of the statement would be on our permanent resident husband Joe. That would explain the hardship on Joe if he would to be left taking care of the child by himself in the United States, or if he had to move to Greece and leave the United States.
So again, it's affidavits, medical records, financial records.
Correct. So as far as the documentation overall, we will be looking for, medical records would be very important. We would basically have the client go to the hospital and obtain copies of the records, sign the releases that needed to be signed, perhaps talk to the doctor and see if the doctor would be willing to write a statement. We would also look into financial situation and get mortgage documentation and budget for the family to explain the hardship that would be dealing with financial situation, aside from the hardship that is falling into the health grounds when we talked about the child that is being sick.
So I guess one of the concerns that clients have is, that they're scared, and that is why it is critically important to consult with a lawyer. There may be some notaries out there who tell you, oh, it's just a letter, and what I can tell you is that advising someone if they have sufficient evidence to apply for a waiver is the practice of law, and you need to consult with an attorney. It is complex. The Chicago Legal Clinic prepares a lot of them. I know Edyta has prepared a number of them, and it does require an analysis and a lot of proof. We have about 1 minute left. Is there anything that you would want to add?
I would just, generally speaking, advise everyone to consult with a lawyer or accredited representative regarding this situation, just because this is very fact-specific and labor-intensive project that that person will be taking on. And I think just filling out the form and submitting it for this application may jeopardize the potential for a success.
We've had situations where that's happened, and again, there's so much more we could add in talking about waivers, but instead, I want to thank you for watching Immigration Forum. I want to thank Edyta for coming and giving us such important information. I want to remind everyone to please be careful out there. If you have concerns about your immigration status or the status of a loved one, please consult with a licensed attorney. Again, if you contact Ayla, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, AILA.org, AILA.org. You can get a referral to an attorney. Thank you very much, and we will see you next month.
Thank you.